you never did L.A.?
Nah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a little place there now because after so many years of, if you added it all up, I've spent years and years of my life in LA.
Yeah.
But my wife was born and raised in Manhattan, and we were just kind of like East Coast people. And for a long time, I think that we had this silly notion that we kind of defined ourselves as New York actors. We're New York actors, and we made a decision that we didn't like LA. And I even wrote a song called "City of Fear," and I think that it was like about the fact that that when you're in LA, your success or failure in terms of like the industry is really very much in your face.
Yeah.
And I was so kind of insecure about that. So I used to say that it's the best place to be if you've just been nominated for an Oscar. You know what I mean? You can't get any better. Or you got a giant, poster on Sunset Boulevard and the movie is crushing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if that's not happening, which is most of the time, it's a place where the industry is so much in your face that I was too insecure to really be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Then, through the years, having spent years of my life at, in the 80s at the Chateau Marmont or the Sunset Marquis, and then in rented houses, one rented house after another. My wife was on a TV series for 7 years.
Right.
And so that was 6 months of the year that, I wasn't there all the time with the kids, but we would be there for a lot of time.
Yeah.
We eventually went, wow, I think we're going to miss it. And so our kids were out of the house. Actually, both of them live in LA now.
Oh, wow.
And we got a little place there. And now I love it now.
Yeah. I think having kids changes it too. I think when you're scraping and you're single, you're not really, or married, and you're kind of like adrift. Like when I went out there, it was when I had my first daughter, and we could have been living in Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like we were our tribe. We were kind of in there. Like it definitely doused a little bit of the show business anxiety. Yeah. Kind of thing.
Yeah. You just have to, you just have to get past that. Then you have to find your community too. I think that's another piece of it. How many kids you got?
Two daughters.
Cool.
22 and 20. They're people now.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you said that they're in LA, that's our debate now. Because we're New Yorkers, and we're in LA now, and we're watching the girls and seeing which way they're going to go, because that's my wife is like, where they go, we go. Because she would come back to New York in a second, but it seems like they're going to split. It seems one really likes LA, one really likes New York.
They're going to college or no?
One's in college and one's a person. One's out now. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll just go back and forth and follow them, I guess.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, your story is so cool because it is a New York actor's story. And just growing up in this area, watching that track has always been so admirable, of like starting in New York, doing off-Broadway, doing Broadway. Then you start getting your things, and always kind of coming back.
I don't think it really exists anymore, though, does it?
No, I know. I'm directing my friend in this off-Broadway thing, and we're looking for a space because we're changing the spot. And the guy who runs it, who's the production, who's like, theater guy forever in New York, he was like, well, it's something off-Broadway. He goes, well, not that off-Broadway exists anymore. And it was such a sad thing to hear.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible. It's
right?
Such a sad thing to hear.
Yeah.
I also don't think there's really, literally, it's funny to think about, but there was literally you were known as a New York actor, and that had a certain kind of cachet when it came to the movie business. You were trying, at least what I was trying to do, and what some of us were trying to do, was follow in the footsteps of, Dustin and De Niro and Pacino and Merrill and you know what I mean? And John Casale and Raul Julia. These were all the people who were kind of defined as having a certain thing that had a kind of interesting cachet in the film business, and besides just their work, it was kind of like what I was aspiring to, and theater was a really big part of that. But now, I mean, if a young person came up to me and said New York or LA, I don't think I would necessarily recommend that you have to stay in New York and get your chops. I think it's like New York or LA. I'd say TikTok.
I know.
Sad but true.
I know. But there was, I mean, what you're describing and what you went through. I mean, that I think just as a craft, like take the business out of it and making it out of it, like the craft. I think the mentality was to be really great and be as good as and real as you could be, right? I mean, isn't that the thing that
totally
right? I mean,
totally. I mean, I started out. I've talked about this before, but what haven't I talked about before? I started out when I was really young with a real desire to be famous, and to make money.
Mm-hmm. When did that hit, by the way?
Probably like 12, 11, whatever.
Where'd that come from?
It came. I'll tell you. I think it was a combination of things. I had older brothers and sisters, so they kind of exposed me to early rock and roll and soul music, and so I was kind of like, I want to be a pop star,
right?
I wouldn't buy them, but I would see the Tiger Beat, covers with like, Michael Jackson and Donny Osmond and David Cassidy and the Partridge Family and all. Like I was like, this is like the thing that I want.
Yeah.
But I also think that from a fundamental way, my father was a famous guy in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
He was he was trained as an architect, but he became a city planner.
Okay.
And he in Philadelphia was very, very like influential in the way that the city kind of developed, and he was very ahead of his time in terms of like really wanting to keep the downtowns and cities in general to remain vibrant, because this was during the 40s and 50s when people were like, we're going to the suburbs, we're getting out of here, this is too
let's run a freeway through this.
This is too scary and whatever, white flight basically. And he loved Philadelphia and became pretty famous in Philly.
Wow.
And so he loved his fame. That's the other thing.
Oh, yeah.
Is that he loved it. Like he would bring home articles in the paper and people would stop him on the street and he'd be like, yes. And, he was like, he was really, had a very, very, kind of healthy ego about that kind of stuff.
Like a de facto mayor.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah. And you could just see him soaking it up. So I think that kind of fame thing hit me. But what happened was I got into acting classes and then came to New York when I was 17 and went to Circle in the Square. And all of a sudden, that piece of it was almost like undesirable. Like you didn't even want to admit that you wanted to have any kind of fame or success because you wanted to be down and dirty and working in, what we call toilet bowl theater. You wanted to be, down in the village, scraping away for $90 a week or whatever it was,
Screw LA.
Yeah, screw LA.
Screw the movies.
Yeah. And so that was the cloth that I was cut from. In fact, I had there was I don't really often think about pivotal moments in careers. I mean, I've heard people do interviews where they just go, and then that happened, and it does. I think more like in terms of like little steps, little things happen along the road. But there was a moment when I was doing a 3-line role in a workshop production. So it was only going to play for 2 weeks at an off-Broadway play that had come from the Actors Theater of Louisville, and they were going to workshop it in New York. And I was offered the television series. It must have been I don't think it was the Diner series. I think it was maybe an Animal House series because I had already done Animal House.
Okay.
And we met moving to LA, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, when somebody comes to you with any kind of TV thing, at that point in your life, I mean, I was literally like had just stopped waiting tables, or I still was waiting tables.
Yeah.
You know, that amount of money would be huge.
Yeah.
And I turned it down because I wanted to do, first off, probably because I was afraid of moving to LA, but also because I just felt so much more at home in New York, but also because I really liked that play. And even though I only had 3 lines, there was just something about it that felt like right for me. And that was a pretty big kind of moment for me.
Yeah, that's a huge thing because you're telling yourself, your subconscious is saying, no. This is what we do. Like we're working, we're growing, like right, we're becoming this thing rather than, you know, I mean, the bad version is you fly out there, you do the Animal House series, and then you get stuck out there and you're working at Ralph's and you're taking anything you can to survive. And all of a sudden your career is this different thing.
Totally.